So without further ado, Ashley, please, the mic is yours.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing on energy? Good. Okay, lovely. So as Dr. Assad led us into this conversation around resistance, I'm going to speak now about innovation, but specifically synergies between America and Africa through the lens of Africans living in America. And I'd also like to say that our existence here, our time here, our return here is also simply an act of resistance. So our history in America as African Americans is often framed and begins in that context based on our arrival of 20 some odd Africans in the Commonwealth of Virginia in 1619. But genealogy shows us different. Genealogy puts our existence on this planet dating back to 16,000 BC. This picture is a picture of the Kush Empire around the time of 3200 BC, when there were complex cultures, complex ideations happening. Our first inventions, writing, is said to have existed during this time. And of course, this is Africa. So our existence began in Africa, and our history starts there, where we are and were the original innovators, the original creators, the original scientists, and problem solvers. So through this talk, I'm going to speak through the lens of talent as I go through and share everything about my research, and what I've done as an economist in economic development is always highlighting talent. And our most valuable resource in America is our African talent. And I'd like to say the same about Africa. Our most valuable resource are not the minerals, it's not the food, but our talent here. And so how do we innovate and create synergies that already pretty much exist? And we'll go through that. We'll go through that in this talk. So we're gonna start with the synergies around talent and capital. So this is our beloved ancestor, Madam C.J. Walker. Some of you may know of her and of her story. She was the first self-made millionaire, the first self-made African millionaire in America who created hair care products geared towards African women, and thus creating an infrastructure and an ecosystem for other self-made entrepreneurs and African women, leading to economic independence, financial stability, and ultimately the growing middle class of what African Americans looks like going into the 17th century. This is Jewel Burke Solomon. So she is our history in motion. She is the legacy of Madam C.J. Walker, our beloved ancestor. And Jewel is a friend, but also an innovator, right? She sold her first technology to Amazon and is operating currently as the first head of startups for Google. She went and also in this role started a venture capital firm where her and her colleagues invest in Black-founded African-founded companies, specifically on the continent of the U.S. But in her work as the head of Google startups, she is very intentional about giving non-dilutive capital, basically meaning money that they don't have to pay back, to African founders. Also, in Africa, I think last year they were able to seed three companies, one in Nigeria and the other in Ghana. So this is what the synergy of capital and talent looks like. Next, we're going to talk about the synergies of creators and technical infrastructure. So Lisa Jalob to her, she is living, right? So she is not an ancestor, but she is one of the first African women to raise over $1 million in seed capital. She is a software developer. She created the technology that allows us to use the GIFs that we all know. So we share those text messages with our friends. She created that technology. She also worked as the head of the U.S. Department of Education under the President Barack Obama administration to facilitate more efficiency for some of the technologies, also including the platform that allowed for Obamacare. This is Idris Sandu. Idris is so brilliant that people just call him a technologist. He does so many things. He was born in Cali, but he is Ghanaian. And so he is creating, he's basically a digital architect. He's creating infrastructure, platforms, logistics for everything Web3, artificial intelligence, and Metasphere. So from wearable technologies, he's partnered with some of the most influential entertainers, some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the US, and is essentially leading what it looks like to be able to create an infrastructure for creators globally. So this is what synergy of creators and infrastructure looks like. The next thing we're going to talk about is synergies in education and Skillshare. So here, what I understand, like talent development, workforce development, is oftentimes, I think, on the continent called Skillshare, where we're able to provide a different level of insight and information to a broader community. So this is our beloved ancestor, Kelly Miller. He was the first Black graduate student in mathematics. He was also a former Howard University dean. His goal and his mission was to create access to education for African students, thus creating and being so pivotal in the legacy and the illustrious legacy of Howard University, where one of our panelists actually is studying. This is Adewale Yusuf. He is a Nigerian who is creating a better future for billions of talents in Africa. Adewale is known as one of the most successful entrepreneurs, African entrepreneurs here on the continent. He's started and founded several ventures, but his one that is hit is called Alt School, where he has created different platforms of education for people all over the world, affordable, access to education to help people be prepared for this global economy, digital marketing, program developers and alike, digital marketing, and essentially has in the last 3 years been able to secure partnerships with major corporations in the US and Europe and abroad, while making access to education and Skillshares affordable, innovating the way traditional education has been done over the years. And so he is definitely someone to pay attention to, and also an advisor, a proud advisor of the Africa Investors Academy. So now we're going to talk about synergies in community and growth. This is really important because this allowed for, in our past and also in our present, communities where we're able to convene, where we're able to have conversations about the impact of what is happening to us, what has happened to us, and how we can take that and grow from within. So this is our beloved ancestor, O.W. Gurley. He is the founder of Greenwood. So he purchased 40 acres of land in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and basically made it a space for other African entrepreneurs to do business, to build community, and to innovate and create economics for themselves. For those who don't know, Greenwood was burnt to the ground by a mob of white supremacists who were angry, who were scared, and who were intentionally interested in the demise and the continued demise of the African population in America. And thus, it is also known as one of the biggest massacres to have happened on the soil of America, although slavery was also that as well. So excuse me, I get a little emotional about this, but O.W. Gurley, as I was doing some research, in understanding what his mission was and what he was intentionally doing and what he was creating, was the inspiration behind the community that I built called the Investors Academy. And so I am his legacy. I have created, in nearly 3 years of being here on the continent of Africa, we've created a community of entrepreneurs, investors, and aspiring entrepreneurs that have an interest in returning to Africa, returning to invest not only their physical capital, but their social capital. Returning to learn more about themselves, because what we've also learned as Africans being raised in America, that our biggest value is our knowledge of self. And so our opportunity to return allows us to learn more about ourselves, learn more about the synergies, and in fact that our ancestors have already done and laid a path for us. They are the innovators and we are their legacies, right? So these are, some action steps moving forward on how do we create those synergies. Well, the synergies exist, right? In my opinion and my hypothesis, again, going back to what is our most viable resource, it is our talent. So we have often been the face of problems and problem solving, thus making us, as Africans, the best problem solvers. So what do we need to do? We need to invest capital in African founders and creators. We need to continue to amplify and promote African creators, and we need to give access to education. We need to inject capital into the access of education for our young talent that is going to inherit the world that we give them. Africans have been the best problem solvers and thus continue to be that. So they are, and we are, the solution to the problems that we are solving every day. So thank you. And one more thing, it isn't simply that Africa needs innovation. It isn't simply that Africa needs innovation. Innovation desperately needs Africans.
Thank you.